Jack had never seen a place like this before. The alien market stretched out in every direction, filled with colors, smells, and sounds he could not name. Tall, twisting stalls stood under bright hanging lights, selling strange fruits that glowed, fabrics that shimmered like water, and small machines that hummed softly as if alive. The air was warm, carrying the sweet scent of some unknown spice, and voices spoke in dozens of languages. Jack walked slowly, his eyes moving from one strange thing to another, his boots crunching on the stone path beneath him. He was here on a trade mission, but right now, he was just enjoying the wonder of this alien world. As he passed one stall, he saw her. A young alien woman stood behind a table covered in flowers unlike anything he had ever seen. They were large and soft, glowing faintly as if each petal caught the light of a hidden star. Her skin was pale with a silver-blue tone, and her eyes, bright and wide, seemed to watch him closely. She didn't call out like the other sellers, didn't wave her hands to grab attention. She simply stood there, holding one flower gently in her hands, looking at him as if she had been waiting. Jack stopped, unsure why. He gave her a small smile and stepped closer. "Beautiful flowers," he said, his voice a little awkward. The alien girl tilted her head, her lips curling in a faint smile, without speaking. She held the glowing flower out to him. The petals seemed to pulse softly, as if alive. Jack looked at it, surprised. Thanks," he said, taking it carefully. The moment his fingers closed around the stem, something shifted in the air. A group of nearby aliens glanced in their direction, whispering quickly to each other. Some looked surprised, others looked angry. Jack frowned, confused. It was just a flower, wasn't it? The girl's eyes softened, and she gave a small, almost shy nod before turning away. She didn't ask for payment, didn't explain anything. Jack stood there for a moment, unsure if he should say more, but she had already turned to serve another customer. He shrugged, slipping the strange flower into the pouch at his belt. Maybe it was just a friendly custom here, he thought, but as he walked through the rest of the market, he noticed something odd. Some people smiled at him, giving respectful nods. Others stared coldly, their eyes sharp and unwelcoming. One alien man even spat near his boots as Jack passed. He felt the tension but couldn't understand it. Why would a simple gift cause this kind of reaction? Later, when he stopped at a food stall to grab something to eat, the vendor, older alien with deep wrinkles, looked at the flower peeking from Jack's pouch and froze. His eyes went wide, and he leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Human." The vendor whispered, "Do you know what you've done?" Jack frowned. "Just took a flower from a seller, that's all." The vendor shook his head slowly. "That is no ordinary flower. You have accepted her proposal." Jack laughed a little, thinking it was some kind of joke. Proposal? Like marriage? The vendor's face stayed serious. In her clan, giving that flower is an offer to bond for life, to give children to her family. Jack felt his stomach tighten. That can't be right. She didn't say anything. "She didn't have to," the vendor said. "The meaning is known by all." He looked around nervously. "And now?" "They all know you accepted." Jack's mind raced. He wanted to believe it was just a misunderstanding, but the way people had been staring at him suddenly made sense. Some had looked at him with respect, those with hatred. The vendor leaned even closer. "If you do not mean to keep the promise, you must return it before it is too late." Jack glanced back in the direction of the flower stall, but the crowd had grown thicker. He couldn't see her anywhere. The market suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. He could hear more whispers. As he passed, feel more eyes on him, some curious, some judging, some almost threatening. He gripped the flower in his pouch, wondering how something so beautiful could feel so dangerous in his hands. Jack had come here to trade goods, not to get caught in alien customs he didn't understand, but now, without knowing it, He might have just agreed to something he could never walk away from, far behind him, hidden in the crowd. The alien girl watched him go, her fingers touched the empty space where the flower had been, her lips curved into a quiet, knowing smile. The human didn't understand yet, but soon. He would. Jack woke up the next morning with the sound of the city already alive outside his window. Alien voices called out in the streets. The hum of hovercarts passed by, and somewhere in the distance a deep chime rang through the air. He sat up slowly, the events of yesterday replaying in his head. The market, the alien girl, the glowing flower, the strange looks from people. And the old vendor's warning. For a moment, he wondered if it was all just a misunderstanding. Maybe. Just a strange custom that didn't really mean what the man had said. But then he remembered the vendor's serious tone, the way his eyes had darted around like danger was near. Jack dressed quickly and decided to return to the market if this was really some kind of misunderstanding. He had to find that girl and give the flower back. The streets were busy as always, full of bright signs and rushing people. He kept the flower hidden in his pouch, not wanting more strange stares. But it didn't help. As he walked, some people still glanced at him, whispering to each other before quickly looking away. One alien man with sharp ridges on his face stepped into Jack's path and stared down at him with a cold, challenging look before moving aside. Jack's unease grew with every step. When he reached the spot where her stall had been, it was gone. The space was empty except for a different seller arranging mechanical tools on a table. Jack asked about the girl, describing her pale skin and silver blue tone, but the man only shrugged. "She left after you took the flower," he said. "Her clan took her away." Jack froze. Her clan? Why? The man gave him a strange look, as if Jack should already know, then went back to arranging his tools without another word. Frustrated, Jack wandered deeper into the market. Every turn seemed to lead him further from the answers he wanted. Finally, in a narrow street between two rows of stalls, a voice called out to him. "Human," it said quietly. Jack turned and saw an older alien woman sitting on a low bench in the shadows. Her eyes were sharp but not unkind, and she motioned for him to come closer. He hesitated, then stepped toward her. "You're the one who took the binding flower," she said softly. Jack almost dropped the pouch at her words. "It was just a gift," he said quickly. "I didn't know what it meant." She shook her head. "It was no simple gift. That flower is sacred to her people, only given when a female chooses her life mate." Jack opened his mouth, then closed it again, his mind racing. "So, the vendor was right," he muttered. The woman leaned forward, her voice even lower. "She is not just any female, human. She is from a high-ranking family, and her choice will shape her clan's future." Jack felt the weight of her words pressing on him. "This is insane," he said quietly. "I didn't agree to anything. I didn't even know her name." The woman's eyes did not leave his face. "In our customs, the act is enough. You accepted the flower. You accepted her." Jack shook his head. "That's not fair." "Fair or not," she said, "if you break the promise now, you will shame her and her clan will seek justice." The word justice hung in the air like a threat. Jack swallowed, imagining what alien justice might look like. Before he could ask more, the woman glanced toward the end of the alley. A group of tall alien men had appeared, their eyes locked on Jack. The woman's voice turned urgent. "Go. Find her before they find you." Jack didn't need to be told twice. He slipped past her and moved quickly into the crowd, his heart beating faster. For the rest of the day, he searched through the market, through the narrow streets, even near the docks where traders came and went. He saw no sign of the girl. Every now and then, he caught glimpses of people watching him from a distance, disappearing the moment he looked their way. By evening, The sky above the alien city was glowing with strange, shifting colors. Jack sat on the edge of a quiet plaza, exhausted and closer to answers than when he started. He pulled the flower from his pouch, holding it in his hands. It still glowed softly, its light almost alive. He didn't understand how something so beautiful could cause so much trouble. As the crowd in the plaza thinned, Jack heard footsteps behind him. He turned quickly, ready for trouble, but it wasn't the angry faces from before. It was her. The alien girl stood a few steps away, her silver blue skin catching the light. Her eyes calm but unreadable. For a moment, they just looked at each other in silence. Then she spoke, her voice soft but certain. "You came looking for me." Jack let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "I need to give this back," he said. Holding out the flower, she didn't take it. Instead, she stepped closer, her gaze locked on his. "You accepted it," she said simply, "and now it is yours." Before Jack could argue, voices shouted from somewhere nearby, angry and closing in. The girl's eyes flicked toward the sound. Then back to him. "You should come with me," she said, "before they find you." Jack didn't know who they were, but the urgency in her voice told him she wasn't joking. Without another word, she turned and began walking quickly into the shadows. Jack looked at the glowing flower in his hand, then at her disappearing figure. He cursed under his breath and followed, not knowing that each step was taking him deeper into a promise he could no longer escape. Jack followed the alien girl through the winding back streets, his footsteps quick to match hers. The noise of the market faded behind them, replaced by the distant hum of machinery and the echo of their steps on smooth stone. She didn't speak, only glanced back now and then to be sure he was still following. The streets grew narrower, the buildings taller, blocking out most of the light. Every shadow felt heavier, every sound sharper. Jack couldn't tell if it was the strange city or the weight of what he had just learned pressing on him. Finally, she led him into a small enclosed garden surrounded by high walls. The air was cooler here, and soft lights glowed along the paths. In the center was a pool of still water, reflecting the shifting colors of the alien sky above. She stopped at the edge of the pool and turned to face him. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. Jack frowned. "You're the one who told me to follow." "I meant, you shouldn't be here on this planet. Not after what happened," she said, her eyes fixed on his. Jack stepped closer, holding out the glowing flower. "I don't want to cause you trouble. Take it back and tell your people it was a mistake." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "In my people's eyes, there are no mistakes with the binding flower. You accepted it." "You are bound." Jack shook his head. "I didn't know what it meant." "You didn't ask," she replied softly. But there was no anger in her tone, only a strange sadness. Before Jack could answer, a sharp voice called from the garden entrance. 3 tall alien males stepped inside, each with broad shoulders, ridged skin, and the same silver-blue tone as the girl. They looked at Jack with open hostility, their eyes narrowing like blades. The tallest one stepped forward, his voice low but dangerous. "So, this is the human who dares to take what is not his." Jack's muscles tensed. "I didn't take anything," he said firmly. The alien's eyes flicked to the flower still in Jack's hand. "You hold proof of your theft." The girl moved between Jack and the alien males, her posture straight. "He accepted my choice," she said, her voice steady. "You can't challenge him for that." One of the others laughed, a harsh sound. "He's not of our blood, not of our people. He doesn't deserve you." Jack's heart pounded. But he stayed quiet, watching the way their eyes followed him like predators. The tallest male stepped closer, towering over Jack. "You will give the flower back now, and you will leave this planet." Jack glanced at the girl, but she didn't move aside. "He can't," she said. "The bond is sealed." The alien's eyes darkened. Then the only way to end this is by challenge. Jack looked from one face to another, confused. What kind of challenge? He asked. The girl turned her head slightly toward him. It's an old tradition. If another male disputes the bond, he can fight for the right to claim it. Jack blinked. You mean a fight? Like hand to hand? Her gaze dropped briefly. Not just that, she said. It's a test. Strength, skill, and willpower. And if you lose, you will never see me again. The tallest alien smirked. Tomorrow, at the central ring. You will face me without waiting for an answer. He turned and left with the others, their heavy footsteps fading into the night. Jack stared after them, then turned to the girl. This is insane. I didn't even want this bond. She met his eyes. Then you can walk away now. But if you do, my name will be dishonored, and my clan will suffer. Her voice was calm. But he could see the flicker of something in her eye sphere, maybe, or hope. Jack rubbed the back of his neck. I don't even know your name, she hesitated. Then said softly, Lyra. They stood in silence for a long moment, the cool air carrying the faint scent of the glowing flowers planted around the garden. Jack didn't know why, but hearing her name made it harder to imagine leaving. Finally, Lyra stepped closer, her voice low. I can help you prepare. I know the trials. I know what they will test. Jack almost laughed. Help me. You want me to win. She looked directly into his eyes. Yes, she said simply, because if you lose, I lose too. The night stretched on as she led him through the hidden streets again. This time to a quiet place far from the center of the city. It was a small training yard surrounded by high metal walls. She handed him a long, curved staff, unlike any weapon he had held before. Jack took it awkwardly. This isn't really my style, he said. Then learn, she replied. Stepping into position with her own staff, under the pale light, they began. The sound of wood striking wood, echoing in the air. Jack's arms ached, his palms burned, but Lyra's calm instructions kept him going. For the first time since arriving on this planet, he began to understand this wasn't just about a flower or a mistake. It was about survival, honor, and something he couldn't yet name. By the time they stopped, sweat was running down his face. Lyra handed him a cloth and gave a small smile. You're not as hopeless as I thought, she said. Jack managed a tired grin. Thanks, I think. But deep down, he knew tomorrow's challenge would be nothing like this practice. And as he lay awake later in the small room she gave him, the glowing flower resting beside him, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just been rewritten in ways he didn't yet understand. The morning came too soon. Jack woke to the pale light spilling into the small room. The city beyond already alive with movement. His muscles ached from the training with Lyra. But his mind was sharper than yesterday. The flower lay on the table beside him. Its glow steady and calm. He picked it up, staring at it for a long moment, wondering how something so fragile could lead him here. The thought of facing a towering alien in front of a crowd made his stomach tighten. But there was no choice now. Lyra was waiting outside, already dressed in her clan's ceremonial colors, deep blue and silver. The fabric flowing around her like water. You're ready? She asked, her tone even, but her eyes searching his face. Jack forced a smile. I guess we'll find out. They walked together through the streets. Word of the challenge had spread, and people lined the roads, watching as they passed. Some nodded respectfully. Others whispered behind their hands. Jack felt the weight of every gaze. The silent judgment of a city that didn't think he belonged. The central ring came into view wide. Open arena surrounded by high stone walls and tiered seating. Thousands had gathered, their voices merging into a low, restless hum. In the center of the ring stood the tallest alien from last night. His arms crossed, a confident smile on his face. Lyra stopped at the edge of the ring and placed a hand on Jack's arm. "Remember what I told you?" she said quietly. "This isn't just about strength. They will test your mind, your balance, your courage." Jack nodded, trying to push down the rising fear. The crowd grew silent as an elder of Lyra's clan stepped forward, his voice carrying over the arena. "The challenge is called the 3 trials," the elder announced. "Only one will stand at the end, and the bond will be sealed or broken." The first trial began without warning. A section of the arena floor split open, revealing a narrow path of stone pillars stretching across a pit filled with swirling mist. Jack stepped onto the first pillar, the stone cool under his boots. His opponent moved fast, leaping across with practiced ease. The mist below shifted and twisted, shapes moving within it like shadows. Jack focused on balance, remembering Lyra's advice to trust his steps. Halfway across, one of the pillars wobbled under his weight. He steadied himself, heart pounding, and kept moving until he reached the other side just seconds after his opponent. The crowd roared, surprised that the human had kept up. The second trial began immediately. 2 staffs were brought forward, the same curved kind Lyra had trained him with. Jack gripped his tightly, feeling the smooth wood in his hands. His opponent spun his weapon with skill, the movement almost too fast to follow. The elder signaled, and they clashed, the sound of wood striking wood echoing across the arena. Jack blocked, ducked, and countered as Lyra had taught him. Every strike sent vibrations through his arms. Every miss brought his opponent closer. A sudden sweep of the staff caught Jack's legs, but he rolled with it, springing back to his feet. He countered with a move Lyra had shown him the night before, striking the taller alien across the side and forcing him back a step. Gasps rose from the crowd. Jack didn't win the second trial outright, but he didn't lose either. The third trial was the most dangerous. From the far side of the arena, a set of heavy doors opened, and 2 large mechanical beasts stepped forward, their eyes glowing red. Their bodies were built from metal and bone, their movements smooth and predatory. The elder's voice rang out. "Work together to disable them, or be crushed." Jack's opponent looked at him with pure disdain. Clearly unwilling to cooperate, the first beast lunged toward Jack. Claws scraping against the stone floor, Jack dodged and struck at its joints, sparks flying where his staff connected. His opponent attacked the second beast, but its tail whipped around, knocking him off his feet for a brief moment. Their eyes met, an unspoken understanding that if they didn't help each other, neither would survive. They moved together without words, Jack striking at weak points while his opponent distracted the machines. When one beast lunged at the taller alien, Jack swung his staff into its exposed neck joint, shattering the metal. It collapsed in a shower of sparks. With both of them now focused on the second beast, it didn't last long when the final blow landed. The arena filled with the sound of cheering and shouting. The elder stepped forward once more, his eyes moving between Jack and his opponent. "The trials are complete," he said, "but only one can claim the bond." The taller alien glared at Jack, breathing heavily. "You fought well." "For a human," he said grudgingly. Before stepping back, it was a concession, an admission of defeat. Without saying the words, the elder turned to Jack. "You have won the right to the bond. Do you accept?" Jack looked at Lyra, standing at the edge of the ring, her eyes locked on his. He could walk away, end it now, and leave this world behind. But as the crowd waited, he realized something had changed. This wasn't just about a mistake anymore. It was about proving he could stand here in their world on his own terms. He nodded once, his voice steady. "I accept." The arena erupted in sound, and Lyra's lips curved into the faintest smile. Jack knew this was far from over. Winning the trials might have earned him the bond, but it had also made him a target, and somewhere deep down, he had the feeling that the real challenge was still ahead. The city had changed for Jack after the trials, where before he had felt only stares filled with suspicion or hostility. Now there were nods of respect, small gestures of acknowledgement as he passed. Still, not everyone was pleased. Some faces in the crowd turned away when they saw him, and a few eyes followed him too closely for comfort. Lyra walked beside him, her posture calm, but her gaze always scanning. The bond between them was official now, yet Jack felt it was still fragile, like a rope stretched tight that could snap with the wrong move. The bonding period had begun, a tradition that required the pair to live together for one full cycle of the planet's moons. During this time, they were expected to learn each other's habits, strengths, and weaknesses, to prove the bond was real and could endure. Jack found himself in Lyra's home. A tall building carved into the side of a cliff overlooking a river of glowing water. The rooms were open and airy, filled with soft light from walls that seemed to store the sun. It was peaceful, but Jack could feel the weight of being watched by neighbors, by her clan, and by those who had wished he had failed. The first few days passed quietly. Lyra showed him how to eat the local food without offending anyone, taught him small phrases in her language, and even laughed a little when he got them wrong. At night, they would sit by the open window, the alien stars above them. Talking about their worlds, Jack began to see the sharp edges in her slowly soften. Replaced with curiosity and something warmer, he found himself wanting to know more. Not just about her culture, but about her. It was on the fourth night that the peace broke. Jack woke to a faint sound, a scrape of metal against stone. He sat up silently, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. From the window, he saw shadows. Moving in the courtyard below, 3 figures, cloaked and fast. Heading straight for the side entrance, he crossed the room and shook Lyra awake. Her eyes snapped open instantly, sharp and alert. "What is it?" she whispered. "We've got company," he replied, already pulling on his boots. They moved quickly and quietly through the house. Lyra handed him a short blade, its hilt shaped to fit his hand. The intruders were already inside by the time they reached the lower hall. The first came through the door, only to be met with Jack slamming into him, driving him back into the wall. The second lunged at Lyra, who moved with precision, twisting the attacker's arm until the weapon clattered to the floor. The third hung back, his voice low and angry. "You shouldn't be here, human. You've brought shame." Jack didn't have time to argue. The first attacker recovered and swung a blade at him, the metal flashing in the dim light. Jack blocked and countered, the sound of steel ringing through the hall. He wasn't a trained soldier, but the trial had taught him to stay on his feet, to move, to think fast. Lyra fought beside him, their movements almost in rhythm. When one attacker came for her, Jack intercepted. And when one came for him, she was there. It was the first time he felt they were truly fighting as one. The fight ended as suddenly as it began. 2 of the intruders fled into the night, their footsteps fading into the streets. The third lay unconscious on the floor, his weapon still clutched weakly in his hand. Lyra knelt beside him, pulling back the hood. Jack saw the ridged face of one of the suitors from the market, his expression twisted in anger, even in unconsciousness. "He won't stop," Lyra said quietly, "and others will come." Jack felt a mix of frustration and determination rise. In him, he had thought winning the trials would end the conflict. But now, it was clear it had only shifted into another form. "They're not just after me," he said. "They're after you too." Lyra met his gaze, her voice steady. "That's why we have to stand together." The days that followed were tense. They couldn't walk the streets without watching their backs. And at night, Jack would wake at the smallest noise. Yet in the middle of the danger, something between them began to change. Lyra no longer kept her distance when they spoke. Her eyes lingered on him a little longer. Her voice softened when she said his name. Jack caught himself noticing the way her silver-blue skin shimmered in the morning light. The way her lips curved when she was hiding a smile one evening. They returned home to find a package left at the door. Inside was a single crushed flower, its glow faint and dying. Jack didn't need to ask what it meant. It's a warning. Lyra said, her voice cold. They want us to know the bond is marked for destruction. Jack looked at her. Then we don't wait for them to come to us, he said. Her eyes narrowed slightly, a spark of something dangerous there. You're suggesting we go after them? I'm suggesting, Jack replied, that we make the first move. Lyra studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. The bond might have begun with a misunderstanding, but now it was something neither of them was willing to give up, and if their enemies wanted a fight, they would get one on Jack and Lyra's terms. The plan began before dawn. The city was still half asleep, its streets quiet except for the hum of distant transport ships and the faint calls of early traders. Jack and Lyra moved through the shadows, keeping 2 narrow alleys and back paths where no curious eyes would follow. She carried a small satchel at her side, while Jack kept his blade hidden under his jacket. They had spent the night mapping out the places where her enemies might be hiding. One name had come up again and again: the House of Varric, a rival. Faction 2, Lyra's clan, known for taking what they wanted by force. If the attacks on them were organized, this was where the orders were coming from. The streets grew narrower as they approached the district. The buildings older and more worn. The air smelled faintly of oil and smoke, and the light from above barely reached the ground. Jack kept his eyes moving, scanning every doorway, every shadow. Lyra walked with quiet confidence, but her fingers rested lightly on the weapon at her belt. When they turned a corner, they saw 2 guards in dark armor standing before a heavy steel door. The symbol of Varric was painted on the wall behind them, 3 jagged lines that looked like claws. Jack slowed his pace. We can't just walk up to them, he whispered. Lyra's lips curved in a faint smile. We don't have to, she replied, pulling a small silver device from her satchel. With a twist, it released a soft pulse of sound Jack could barely hear. The guards stiffened, then staggered, clutching their helmets. By the time the sound faded, both had collapsed against the wall. Unconscious, they slipped inside, finding themselves in a dimly lit corridor lined with crates and storage units. The air was colder here, carrying the faint hum of power running through the walls. They moved deeper until voices echoed from a large, open chamber ahead. Jack peered around the corner and saw 6 figures gathered around a table covered in maps and glowing data screens. At the head of the table stood the tall alien who had challenged him during the trials. His eyes locked on the map as he gave orders. We strike at the river house tonight, the alien was saying, and the bond. And the clan will have no choice but to abandon the human. Jack's grip tightened on his blade. Lyra placed a hand on his arm. Not yet, she whispered. Instead of rushing in, they slipped around the edge of the room, staying in the shadows until they reached a stack of crates near the table. From here, they could hear everything. It became clear this wasn't just about personal rivalry. The House of Varric wanted control of the glowing flower fields lands owned by Lyra's clan for generations. Breaking the bond wasn't just about shaming her. It was about weakening her family enough to take their territory without a war. Jack felt the anger rising in him. All of this, every fight, every attack had been a step in a larger plan. One of the figures glanced toward the crates, and Jack knew they had been spotted. The tall alien's eyes narrowed when he saw them. So the human comes to us, he said, his voice dripping with contempt. The room erupted into movement as the Varric fighters reached for their weapons. Lyra moved first, striking one across the head before he could aim. Jack swung his blade up to block another. The clash of metal ringing in the air. The fight was fast and brutal. Jack moved with the instincts he'd sharpened in the trials, staying low, striking hard. Lyra's movements were sharp and precise, each strike disabling rather than killing, but the tall alien was stronger and faster than the others when he came at Jack. The force of his blows nearly drove him back into the wall. Jack caught one strike, twisted his opponent's wrist, and shoved him toward Lyra, who swept his legs from under him. The remaining Varric fighters hesitated, their leader on the ground. Lyra's voice cut through the air. "Tell your house the bond stands," she said coldly, "and if you come for us again, we will end this in blood." The fighters dragged their leader up and retreated, their footsteps echoing down the corridor until silence returned. Jack let out a slow breath. Leaning on his blade for a moment, "That was close," he muttered. Lyra glanced at him. "You fought well," she said simply, then turned toward the door. They left quickly, not wanting to risk reinforcements by the time they returned to her home. The sky above the city was glowing with the colors of the rising suns. The danger wasn't gone, but they had bought themselves time. Jack set the glowing flower on the table, its light steady and warm. Lyra stood beside him, her expression unreadable. "You could have left," she said quietly. "You could have walked away from all of this." Jack looked at her and shook his head. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. For a moment, she didn't respond. Then she gave a small nod. There was still a long road ahead and more enemies waiting. But something between them had changed. The bond no longer felt like a trap, it felt like a choice. The final days of the bonding cycle passed faster than Jack expected. The city seemed quieter after their strike against the House of Varric. But the quiet felt thin, like glass that could shatter at the slightest touch. Jack and Lyra moved through their days with a strange mix of routine and tension. Training together in the mornings, handling clan matters in the afternoons, and watching the alien stars from the balcony at night. It was during one of those nights that Lyra finally spoke about the end of the cycle. "When it is over," she said softly, her gaze fixed on the sky, "you will be free to leave, no questions asked." Jack looked at her profile in the moonlight, the silver blue of her skin glowing faintly. "Is that what you want?" he asked. She hesitated before answering. "What I want doesn't matter if you don't want the same." Her words lingered in Jack's mind long after she went to bed. He had come to this planet as a trader, a stranger in a strange world. Now, he found himself bound to a woman whose life was tangled in honor, politics, and danger, and yet, somewhere between the trials, the fights, and the quiet moments, he had stopped seeing the bond as an accident. It had become something real. The decision might have been made right then, if not for the attack. It happened on the last night before the cycle ended. Jack woke to the sound of shattering glass and the rush of cold air into the room. Lyra was already on her feet, weapon in hand. Figures poured in through the broken window, 6 of them, armed and fast. The leader stepped forward, his face marked with the jagged lines of Varric. "You should have left when you had the chance." "Human," he growled. The fight exploded instantly. Jack blocked the first strike aimed at him, driving his attacker back with a hard kick. Lyra moved like a storm beside him, every strike precise and brutal. The attackers were skilled, but so were they. The room filled with the sound of clashing steel, the heavy thud of bodies hitting the floor, and the sharp hiss of breath. But the attackers weren't here just to fight. 2 of them broke off, heading for the table where the glowing flower rested. Jack saw them and moved fast, cutting one down with a sweep of his blade and slamming the other into the wall. No one was taking that flower, not while he was still standing. The leader of the attackers roared and came for Jack, his strikes heavy enough to rattle Jack's bones. Jack met him head-on. The 2 of them locked in a desperate struggle. Lyra took down the last of the others and turned just in time to see the leader shoved Jack back against the wall without thinking. She crossed the room and drove her blade into the alien's side. The leader staggered, eyes wide, before collapsing at Jack's feet. Silence filled the room, broken only by their heavy breathing. Jack looked at Lyra, his chest still heaving. "You saved my life," he said. She gave him a small, tired smile. "We save each other." By morning, word had spread through the city Vark's last attempt to break the bond had failed. The elders of Lyra's clan summoned them to the great hall. The room was filled with clan members, their eyes watching closely as the head elder spoke. "The cycle is complete," he said. "The human may now choose. Stay and strengthen the bond, or leave and walk away free." The hall went quiet, all eyes on Jack. He glanced at Lyra, standing beside him with her head high, her expression calm but her eyes betraying the faintest flicker of uncertainty. Jack thought about everything they had faced, how she had stood between him and danger, how she had taught him, trusted him, fought beside him. He thought about the nights on the balcony, the way her laughter sounded when she forgot to hide it, and he thought about the glowing flower. The start of everything, still safe in his hand. He stepped forward, holding the flower out. The elders leaned in, the room holding its breath. Jack's voice was steady when he spoke. "When I first took this, I didn't understand what it meant," he said. "Now I do. And I'm choosing to take it again." Gasps rippled through the hall, followed by a rising murmur. Lyra's eyes widened, then softened as she took the flower from his hand, her fingers brushing his. The elder raised his staff. "Then the bond is sealed, by choice and by honor," he declared. The hall erupted in cheers. Lyra's smile was small but real, the kind that reached her eyes. Jack felt the weight of the past weeks lift, replaced by something warmer. Whatever came next, tribal houses, political games, more danger, he knew. They would face it together, and as they left the hall side by side, the glowing flower between them, Jack realized that this alien world no longer felt like a place he had stumbled into. It felt like home.